Hi everyone. Today I wanted to talk about a relationship that I think is quite deeply misunderstood. In fact, it's rarely spoken about. And even when it is, I think it's incredibly misunderstood. And that's the relationship between fathers and daughters, particularly in South Asia, in a place, for instance, like Pakistan. Now, my vantage point to this conversation is twofold. First of all, just having experienced a particular form of this relationship in my own home, along with my siblings and me. And secondly, now as a parent, to be thinking carefully about, what is the sort of relationship that you hope your daughters will have with their father without you imposing that completely. You want to leave the space for them to build their own equation. But, what are some of the things you hope to nurture within that relationship? And so the first thing that I think I saw growing up, but I generally feel is incredibly understated and often is hardly adopted as the approach in a place like Pakistan by fathers, is the fact that there is a difference between raising daughters based on respect rather than fear. And often those two things get conflated. So in the case of my siblings and me, for instance, let me give you a small example. If we came home at a particular time, say 10 p.m., 11 p.m., whatever that time was, that wasn't because there was a set curfew in the house. In fact, I don't remember a curfew being there for quite a long time. But if we came home at that hour, it was much more based out of respect for my father's values, for my parents' values, but because we're talking about fathers right now, I'm emphasizing that, rather than the fear that someone will be standing there ready to cane you or reprimand you or call you out. No. And I think raising children based on respect rather than something more coercive, rather than something like fear, is truly a successful form of parenting. It's not easy to achieve. And I think from time to time, of course, a certain other tactic might need to be employed. But in general, if your children are taking on your value system based on out of respect for it and for you rather than fear, that's a move in the right direction. Now, a beautiful byproduct of this is the fact that when children start respecting you rather than fearing you as a father figure, you're also opening up doors and creating beautiful avenues for shared emotions, shared vulnerability. You're showing that there's space for mistakes and kind of to collectively pick up from there, rather than this sense of, there's no room for error in this family. And I think a lot of times when I speak to even friends, and here I'm talking about people with privilege, I'm not talking about just a certain echelon of Pakistani society, but rarely will I find daughters who will talk about these relationships with their father, or who are going to talk extensively about bonding with their father, opening up with their father. And I feel that so much is lost in that equation, the ability to strike up a kind of emotional intimacy, to create a safe space and say, it's okay to come to me. I still remember with Abu, we always knew at the back of our minds that if something was wrong, no matter what our role in that had been, we could always come to him. And the first thing he would do before any other response is, he'd just make you feel safe. He'd make you feel like we'll get through this together. So that's the second thing. And the third thing is that I think what a lot of fathers don't realize, especially in South Asia, is the fact that in many cases, they are the first male role model, prototype, whatever you want to call it, that girls will experience. So the way fathers conduct themselves, the way they speak, the way they act, the way they interact with their daughters, that is the first flavor a girl will get of what to expect from the male kind. Now, allow me to clarify that I am not suggesting that following that, every other male that she interacts with in the future has to replicate or be a clone of her father. Not at all. In fact, that can be quite detrimental. But I'm making a slightly different point. That is to say that she will start setting expectations, boundaries, notions of what is acceptable, how much should be compromised, what is permissible or not, from the way that a father conducts himself in her presence. And so, whether it's in terms of violence, degrees of anger, degrees of kindness, that is something to really look out for, because you're sort of saying, this is green lit and hence okay because it's happened from within my home. And on the other hand, you're also, it has the potential to say, you can have a very close-knit, very meaningful bond. And so overall, I suppose what I'm saying is that we in this attempt to discipline, with this normative cultural expectation of being reserved, being distant, or the minute your father's coming home from work, you're supposed to just shut off everything, hush yourself up, and kind of put on this mask of sobriety. I think what happens with that is that you lose out the potential to forge this beautiful, powerful, and incredibly meaningful bond where you can express. I mean, we all know that men expressing in Pakistan is a bit of an oxymoron anyway. But when you kind of forge that equation with your daughters where there is shared emotion, you're allowing them to reciprocate with that. I think the biggest thing is that you're creating a kind of safe space rather than showing them these brands of toxic masculinity. You're showing them that you've actually got to ward off those brands of toxic masculinity, because that's not okay. Now, the point is not to raise rebellious daughters just for the sake of being rebels, but it's to show them how much is too much, perhaps. It's to show them resilience. It's to show them that we've moved beyond the pinks and the blues. And so I think when that doesn't happen, one of the biggest fallouts or losses from that, or collateral damage of that, is that you're kind of throwing out the baby with the bathwater, because the potential for that relationship to bloom, to be nurtured, to kind of evolve into something that lends joy and confidence and more power to a girl as she grows up and moves through life and navigates other relationships, that power is completely lost rather than being harnessed. So if any fathers are listening to this, especially from South Asia, I would really say that I firsthand experienced what a father figure who debunks these stereotypes of the typical Desi father can do to a daughter's life, and how much that value system gets embedded, ingrained within you, and how that eventually gives you the tools to kind of move through even when he's not there anymore. I can't emphasize that enough. And that's why I wanted to just share these little reflections with you. So whether it's things like deep listening, just the openness, the safety, I think those are things to really prioritize in the parenting and the fatherhood list.